Hey everyone, welcome back to CryptoCache. Thank you so much for joining me here. Hope you're having an amazing day. Welcome back to reality. I just got back from London last night, so I do apologize for the delays. If you are new to the channel or just have been watching my channel for a while, I didn't disappear for a week. I technically was busy up at Token 2049 in London, so check that out. Feel free to reference my social media for any type of information regarding that. But what we want to look at here, of course, is Bitcoin and what's been happening. Obviously, you were probably part of the destruction last week and saw just how terrible the market got. Okay, a lot of that was based on FTX, so try not to over concern yourself with it. It does take a while for the market to come back, based on the fact that it fell very, very hard, very fast. Okay, so logic would tell you that the price should come up based on the FTX thing being in the past, but in truth, that's not the case. It takes a while for that to recover. So we should expect some range-bound activity for a little bit. All right, so before we jump in, I want to kind of highlight a couple of things. First of all, if you're not using Bitget, make sure you definitely use the link in the description below if you want to be part of my CryptoCache trading team. Essentially, I have a really awesome team, and we have a handful of members that are ready to go here for our event. Okay. Future reference though, they offer trading bonus volume every single month, and essentially we have a trading pool of usually $10,000 monthly. So when this is not going, we'll have that as a normal option. But if you don't use my link, you won't qualify for that. The last thing I also want to kind of highlight too as well is a couple of updates that I had sent my community here. So in other words, yesterday, as a matter of fact, what happened is I was able to notice, and this happens a lot of times in cryptocurrency, where the CMA gap gets filled. So on basically Friday when the futures had closed, CME futures closed, the price was closed closer to 16,000. And then yesterday, when I sent out this message letting my community know that 17,000 was the current price point, it's likely going to fill this gap, it actually happened. Okay, so likelihood of correction is very high in a lot of cases. It doesn't always get filled right away, but eventually it does. Yeah, it's just the profits being taken from that gap there. It's a really common consideration. So congrats to my community members that actually benefited from that and were able to short, as I mentioned. I didn't have time to send out signals. I was at the airport the whole time, but when I got back last night, it did appear that the CME gap got filled. We were at 16,000. So what I decided to do is take a long position at that point. And just to clarify too, we do expect Bitcoin to be range bound between 15.5 and 17.5 for some time. Again, the immediate foreseeable future. Till it breaks above or below, we can expect that. And range trading is absolutely one of the most enjoyable things for myself, because you just buy high, sell low, and buy low, sell high. It's really simple if you work within the range. All right, we'll talk about that here in a moment, but here's the setup for the trade that we took yesterday and just how that happened, right? So again, Bitcoin CME gap got filled down to 16,000. It was extremely overextended on both the 4 hour and the 1 hour. So I decided to take entry at 16,150. We came also for Ethereum, I sent out a signal at 1195. Okay, so both 20x and 20x long positions, as well as spot exchanges. And if we take a look here, just kind of fast forward to this morning, we took a nice cool 68% from Bitcoin, and of course 108% from Ethereum. Okay, so again, standard stuff, normal things that I typically do in my community. So if you're part of that, congrats again on those awesome, easy profits. But generally speaking, that's what went into this here, CME gap getting filled, okay? Plus overextension, and we'll look at that here in a minute. So here's what we want to kind of focus on first and foremost is that with Bitcoin, big picture, it's not looking great, okay? There's no doubt about it. We hit a big old reset button here recently, but if you look at this long-term trend line, we can kind of extend that out a little further. We can see we're still holding above that, okay? So again, slight consolation, we shouldn't see a price point too much lower, but again, it's still possible and it's still a reality. We got to wrap our heads around that. I'm not saying it's fantastic by any stretch, but it is definitely the case. Another thing too is we can see this Fibonacci retracement level right around 17,500 is essentially the ceiling, the tentative ceiling for the moment. So again, that's another reason why I feel like we might be range bound between 15.5 and 17.5. Okay, so if that is the case, all well and good. Plenty of profits to be taken in that area. What I also recommend doing is adding to your position. I added a lot to my position here recently this last week because it felt nice to have everything on sale. Now again, prices could come down eventually, but the likelihood of long-term corrections to the upside is very high. I think that we're more likely to see Bitcoin go up inevitably than it would much lower from here. It could still happen, but just again, something to think about. All right, so on the daily, that's kind of where we're at. Range bound 17.5 to 15.5. We can see that we bounced off of 30, kind of, if you will, or close to it on the RSI. So that kind of gave me a little bit of confidence in taking a position yesterday when we were so low. It couldn't go much lower. We could have very well seen a double bottom. That is a potential reality here. In fact, we are probably seeing that forming at the moment. We'll look at smaller time frames to identify it. But generally speaking, right now, being overextended to the downside, the likelihood of a pullback is higher. We can also see that the MACD is starting to correct itself, and this is a good sign. Okay, it's starting to lose that momentum. We have not converged at all, and we're not even close to that. It's going to take a while for that to occur. But generally speaking, we see some subtle signs here that are more positive than negative. Looking at the moving averages too, we're well below all three. That doesn't matter at this moment, okay? It was nice when we were up above, but now that we're down below, we can expect those to be resistance levels, and they'll work their way down soon. We'll eventually, see what that looks like. But the great news is the 200-day simple moving average is still working its way down. It's going to come down faster and sooner. So I still think we're going to see that golden cross from the 50 intersecting with a 200 in upward fashion in the next couple of months. I think that's a reality. Okay. So I do think Bitcoin is going to be down for a little while. We shouldn't expect November or December to be great months, but I do think we're going to see recovery early next year. All right. All right, so that's what the daily's telling us here. Looking at the 4 hour, let's go ahead and identify a couple of things. First and foremost, moving averages, we're well below that. We kind of know that at this point. What I want to kind of show you here, and I'll show that in a second, is the overextension to the downside. But additionally, we were bouncing off 30 on the RSI as well when I sent out that signal last night. Okay, so again, that kind of gives us the reaffirmation that we have a nice support level. I waited for that to happen, and it occurred. Okay, so again, try to be patient if you can. If you're a community member or just in general a subscriber that is not part of my my premium membership, essentially, which, by the way, you can register at CryptoCache.tech. Link down below for that. I just recommend that you are cautious and careful in this trading environment. Okay, add to your position as the price goes lower if it's a spot, it's kind of like a spot long-term hold, but also wait for overextensions to occur. When you see 30 on the RSI, and then also taking a look at TD sequential, we are down to about a 6. There's a bit of an overextension to the downside there. The 1 hour will also confirm this too. As a matter of fact, why don't we take a look at that here? You can see that right when I took the position, we were right here in extreme overtime. We had 1.9 here, and then previous to that, we also had an 8. So you see an 8 and a 9 in a row on the hourly. The likelihood of a pullback is quite high. Again, it's overextension to the same direction. So it kind of follows suit with like the 3 white soldiers, candlestick pattern I like to talk about, or 3 black crows. Basically, just you see 3 extremely long one-day candlesticks in a row. That's 72 hours of continuation in the same direction. It's going to pull back. Greed is a very real thing. If you understand that, you can anticipate what the whales are going to be doing next. The whales pushed the price down as low as they could. They did a nice liquidation hunt all the way down to about 16,000, just under, and of course they spiked the price back up. Okay, there's no specific catalyst that caused this to come up, minus the fact that it was overextended to the downside. That's personally, again, those are the kind of trading techniques I like to apply, and that's why it keeps me successful and consistently hitting a pretty decent profit margin month in and month out. But you got to recognize too that with this overextension, it's not foolproof either. That's why we use the relative strength index on the 4 hour, for example, and essentially use that as a bouncing point and continue higher, right? All right. So again, generally speaking, there's a lot of little things you can factor in, but not being an exact science by any stretch, that's essentially what went into that trade and why we took 68% in just under 9 hours, or just right around 9 hours, of course. So again, something to think about. Last thing to look at here, let's go ahead and see where we're at in the cloud. We're getting rejected tentatively by the cloud. We tried to break above that when the market opened and got rejected. Conversion lines above the baseline, which is nice, shows momentum to the upside, which is standard. We could probably see a similarity there on the 4 hour MACD. But if you take a look at the lagging span, it's still kind of within the price action. So in truth, there's no real indication here that you want to take a long position just yet. So again, all those profit targets that I have, the likelihood of it hitting target 4 and 5 is lower at this point, based on it losing its momentum, getting rejected by the cloud, and of course that Fibonacci retracement level here at about 16,862. So we can round up and say 16.9, maybe even 17,000 is a safe number, whereas you might want to have a stop loss above that if you're going to be, shorting, for example. And if you're going to long, your long, I would say like a good stop loss for a long position would be somewhere in the range of 15.8. For example, because again, we're range bound between 15.5 and 17.5. So if you have your stop loss too tight, you'll get wicked out, and then the price come right back up with you. That's why we have a specific bear market strategy right now in place. So obviously, if you're a community member, you know that. But generally speaking, there's different strategies for different times and different climates. Right now, we're in extremely bearish territory. We got to recognize this. This is a crypto winter for the moment, and we got to survive, batten down the hatches, and throw that wood in the furnace there whenever we possibly can. And that's being patient and waiting for the right time when the price is extremely overextended and it has to pull back one way or the other. It may not recover the way that we want it to, but it's going to bounce back, and you can take profits in little areas here and there. Okay. So again, urge caution to long positions right now, just in general. Is recommended not to necessarily go long for the moment because the current trend is still down. But I do think this momentum to the downside is going to start to dissipate here soon, just based on things kind of, the air starting to clear. But on the same accord, fear is a very real thing, and we need to recognize that it's going to continue to push the price action down, regardless of how awesome other things might be. Keep this in mind too, traditional markets are not doing fantastic today. So they kind of gapped down a little bit, they've recovered a slight bit, but they're not doing as great as yesterday with that massive gap up. Okay, so again, that's kind of where we're at there. And oh, sorry, I said yesterday, that was technically Thursday, Friday, right there, the gap was at. So anyways, big picture, dollar index is up, Bitcoin's down, no surprise. In summary, we're looking at a range bound, likely once again between 15.5 and 17.5, just kind of holding within this plane here until we see a breakout to the upside or downside. So I'll pay attention to different patterns that we're seeing, different candlestick patterns. A little too early and premature to estimate that. I would not expect an immediate recovery unless some kind of fundamental catalyst pushes the price action higher. For right now, based on a technical standpoint, we are stuck in this range here, 15.5 to 17.5. It's just kind of the easy way to summarize it. All right. So be cautious, be careful, trade well, trade smart. Make sure you use Bitget if you haven't already. Link in the description below to register. There is trading bonuses, of course, and registration bonuses. And you're eligible for all that as long as you use my link. Okay. So again, moving forward, we're going to start having more competitions. They're healthy competitions, by the way. There should be no stress and no pressure to do anything different. It's just a nice little merit there to get that bonus. A lot of my members got paid out $500, $1,500, $1,000 each just for taking place of that. And that's really awesome for Bitget to do that. So thank you, Bitget, for being an awesome host as well in London there with token 2049. And I do hope that you all have a great rest of your day. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks again for your time. Take care.